I cannot pretend all the ideas in this book are completely original. War games were invented and being played hundreds of years before I was born. Someone, somewhere, at some time has thought of every rule, every exception to every rule, and every exception to every exception. Thus, like the painter who first studies the old masters before striking out on his own, the foundations of my knowledge rest on the work of others who have gone before. Joseph Morschauser III, 1962. Hello, Wargamers, and welcome back to Purple Druid Presents Wargame Culture. Today, we are going to talk about Joseph Morschauser's book, How to Play Wargames in Miniature. This will be a short evaluation of this book. The edition of the book that I am working from was edited by Bob Cordery and John Curry and is part of the early Wargames project that John Curry has been working on for some time now. This book is a very good book if you are new to the ideas of wargaming. It has quite a bit of historical information and background information, as well as guidance on how to select a historical period, how to form your basic units, and how to physically model a battlefield for playing your games. There is a set of basic rules for infantry, cavalry, missile troops, and so on. And then he goes into somewhat more detailed rules for what he calls the shock period, the musket period, and the modern period. The shock period covers that part of history in which hand-to-hand fighting played the most important part in a battle. It extends from the beginning of warfare between tribes and nations to about the 15th century, according to Mr. Morschauser's division. The most famous battles in this period he lists as the Greek and Persian Wars, the Punic Wars, the 100 Years' War, and then as late as the Wars of the Roses. The musket period he calls a transition between wars fought mainly by hand-to-hand methods and those fought with missile weapons, which can kill at a distance. He says the musket-bayonet combination changed warfare completely. Soldiers could now shoot down some of the enemy at a distance and then charge into hand-to-hand fights with the remaining troops. War became a combination of shock and fire. The most interesting battles he lists here, the 7 Years' War, or in America, the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, the Crimean War, and the American Civil War. The modern period, he says, is the one, of course, in which we now live. And about the time of the end of the American Civil War, guns began to develop such range, accuracy, and firepower that the charge of soldiers in tight formations could easily be broken by fire alone. And obviously, the introduction of self-powered vehicles, armored vehicles, has changed warfare again. So he says the modern period, beginning with the invention of the tank in 1916, the most interesting of these wars are World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. Of course, he's writing from the perspective of 1962, so he's missed out on a few of the more recent ones. Now, one of the other things that Morschauser goes into is he kind of innovated the idea of putting multiple troops on one stand. He calls it a tray, and he uses this to create his basic units, which infantry, cavalry, and artillery. He puts 4 soldiers on an infantry stand, 2 horsemen on a cavalry stand, and an artillery stand consists of 2 foot soldiers and 1 cannon. And these are just his basic units, and they are used for the shock period, the musket period, and then with small changes into the modern period. In the next chapter, chapter 5, he goes into how to create a battlefield with really basic setup. It's a grid-based setup with 1-inch squares upon a green base. You just need some accessories, 5 houses, 4 hills, a dozen trees should be enough. He says that you can create roads, of course, from cutout paper or felt, and there are limitless ways then using those pieces to set up the battlefield. One of the interesting things is that the houses and trees are a little bit different than what you might think of. The trees are, of course, 3-dimensional aquarium trees, which you would expect in the 60s, but the houses are flats, and they're set up so that you place them on the battlefield along the grid line so that the troops can move around them and not have to be balanced on top or anything like that, or have to move around the various buildings, which I think is a pretty cool idea. Again, in the basic rules, he gives ranges, movement rates, the number of hits that a unit can take, and various modifiers for movement regarding especially, hills, through forests, etc. And he goes through all of these very simply, very quickly. A basic musket period army. He recommends that you start with 3 regiments of regular infantry, which would be 15 basic units, 1 regiment of light infantry, which would be 5 basic units, 1 regiment of cavalry, which is 5 basic units, and then 1 regiment of artillery, which is 3 basic units. The regular infantry, he recommends putting 3 to 5 miniatures on a base, and for the light infantry, just put 1 miniature on a base to distinguish them. So once you've got this done, the rest is very simple. The rules are very easy. You roll a d6, you do the modifiers, you subtract the strength points, and you're good to go. This is a great book. Again, like I said, for people that are new to the hobby, and if you're a veteran of the hobby, this may be interesting to you as a historical document. I think that, it's worth getting, it's worth reading over, and it may even give you some ideas if you're working on a rule system of your own. Indeed, according to Bob Cordery, who I've spoken to on Twitter, this was a big influence on his development of the portable war game, which I can definitely see is the child of this type of gaming system, and is, again, a very flexible style of system for gaming. It is quite abstract. It is not very concerned with historical accuracy and, getting into the finely granulated nitty-gritty of these battles, but they definitely look like they'll be a lot of fun. So thank you for listening. Be sure to tune in for the next short review in the Wargames Book Club. Also, check out the Substack, wargameculture.substack.com, for design journal information. Keep on gaming.